Now joining the show, Philadelphia Flyers analyst Jason Martinez. Jason, the Flyers have been an emotional roller coaster for the city since the beginning of 2021. They went on to play sixth in the East last season, which was very disappointing after starting 11-4-3 that year. They allowed the most goals in the league by the end of April 2021 as well. And then they haven't had the best start this season either. They acquired RyanEllis from the Predators in the offseason, and then he's been hurt for the majority of this season. How has the Ellis injury hurt Ivan Provorov specifically, and then the overall play of the team?
Well, it's been a huge factor because 2 years ago in 2019-20, before the pause, when they had Matt Niskanen, Provorov and Niskanen, that top pairing was very good for the Flyers. They did a great job of limiting top lines of the opposition, and that's the name of the game. And when they didn't have Niskanen last year, you saw the result. Like you said, they gave up the most goals in the NHL last year, and that's not a good trait for a team. You got to keep the puck out of your net, and it was really the top lines of the opposition that ate them alive. Matter of fact, Mika Zibanejad from the Rangers on that top line had 2 6-point games in a row against the Flyers. And they went out and they got RyanEllis, and they made the trade, and they gave up Phil Myers, and they gave up Nolan Patrick. Pretty steep price, but Ellis has only played 4 games. The games he played, they look good, and he looked good, but availability is the number one thing. It doesn't matter how good you are in any sport. If you're not available, you don't get to deploy your skill set. It's been a huge factor because slot everybody defensively different. So it puts guys in a role that they're suited for. You can play up for a game or two in the next man up mentality. It's cute, but it's not feasible long term. They need to get RyanEllis back. They need to get him playing with Ivan Provorov because he's become a bit partner dependent, is the way I would term it. And he can't do it on his own. And when you're playing with a lesser partner, you have to try and do more. And when you're trying to do more and do other jobs, you're not doing your job. And it's been a huge problem for this team and a big factor as to why, they had the 10-game winless streak. And right now they're on the outside of the playoff picture looking in.
Yeah, we already said that they struggled early on. They've had the injuries, the Ellis injury that we just talked about, Kevin Hayes, and then COVID's now become an issue. But despite all of that bad, they're in their last 5 games, they're 4-0-1. So what do you think has led to this recent success?
Well, part of it's been the coaching change. And not to say that the struggles were Alain Vigneault's fault, but it's weird in hockey. I was asked about this when I was doing an interview on a radio station in Canada. Why do the Flyers keep firing coaches? And I brought it full circle and say, why do NHL teams keep firing coaches? And the answer is pretty simple, because it works. It's worked for a lot of teams. You look at Bruce Boudreau in Vancouver right now, since that change in coach, 6-0. You look at the Flyers back in 2009 when they fired John Stevens and brought in Peter Laviolette, they went to a cup final. And we see this not only in Philadelphia, but all over the NHL. Sometimes it's not necessarily the message that needs to be changed, but it's the messenger. And I don't know what the reason is why it's so effective in hockey. I have some suspicions, but Mike Yeo has got the guys playing a little bit different. He's deployed the assets of the team and the skill sets a little bit differently, and just a little bit of confidence. And when the narrative changes from a 10-game winless streak to something else, like when it's like a pressure valve that gets released, and then you finally win a game, and then you can go on a bit of a run. Now, the pause that happened with shutting the league down a couple days early before the Christmas break, we'll see what cost that is for them. Does that help them or does that hurt them? Because when you're playing well, you can't have enough games on the schedule, and when you're struggling, you have too many games on the schedule. So we'll have to see how that affects it. But yeah, Ellis still out. Hayes is now back from the COVID protocol, and along with Morgan Frost, but you've added players like Sean Couturier, Carter Hart, Derek Brassard, and this is going to go on, and how this plays out and how they can overcome it. Every team's dealing with it, but how you overcome it and how you can get through this period of time while players are on COVID-19 protocol is really going to be a big determining factor for not only the Flyers, but a lot of teams, and if they're in position to be a playoff team, when it's all said and done.
With all the COVID cases happening lately, and like you said, the NHL going on the pause a little early, it has come out that now they will not be able to participate in the 2022 Winter Olympic Games. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it was inevitable because of the situation. We saw that, a couple weeks ago, that if you tested positive when you were over there, you'd have to be in basically government housing in China, in Beijing, for 3 to 5 weeks. And you just knew that NHL owners weren't going to go for that. Connor McDavid, who's basically, the most talented player, most dynamic player in the league, when he was asked about it, he said it's very unsettling. So you knew the writing was on the wall. And once the material changes to the schedule took place with all the COVID postponements, the league had no option but to basically say that the players can't go. They didn't want to do it. They wanted the players to come to that conclusion because they were the ones that fought to go. But the players in this situation, there's no ill will. They understand it, that it's just not in the cards right now. Maybe they'll try and do a World Cup of Hockey to do a best on best international tournament. So those players that, can put on, their country's jersey and do that. But the Olympics weren't in the cards, and they'll use that period of time in February, that almost 3 weeks, 22 days, to make up games that have been postponed, because they're still going to play 82 games. They're not going to lose that revenue. They're not going to lose those TV money and every ancillary dollar that comes with that, especially after a year with no fans for the most part and limited games.
Yeah, it does make sense. So looking ahead into 2022, what are your keys for the Flyers to keep making progress going forward and making the playoffs?
First and foremost, to find, what they want to be. They're a team that right now, and an organization that lacks a little bit of identity. And when you lack identity and you don't know what you want to be, how the heck are you going to be something? So you got to figure out, they have to figure out if they're going to go in a rebuild direction. And if they are, there's a certain coach for that. Maybe it's Mike Yeo. Maybe it's somebody else that they hire, a Dan Quinn or somebody like that. Or are they going to go, okay, we're a veteran team. We're going to push and, try to add to this veteran team and, be a team that can get into the playoffs and make some noise. They have to figure out what direction they're going. They have some time to figure that out before the trade deadline this year. But if you get to the point where you're at that trade deadline and you're not a playoff team and the math looks tough to make the playoffs, you got to consider going to Claude Giroux and asking him to waive his no-move clause and trade him. He's in the final year of his contract. There's other guys like Rasmus Ristolainen they can move as well and get a nice return for. So they have to figure out what direction they're going. It's going to be a fading year because so much between now and basically late March is going to determine not only the remainder of this year and 2022, Sam, but it's going to determine the next 3 to 5 years in a lot of ways. So they're at a real crossroads as an organization, and they got to figure out which direction they're going to go in, make the right decisions, commit to it, and do it properly.
It's going to be interesting to see how it all shakes out. But thank you so much, Jason, for joining us. Before you go, though, where can everybody find your new projects that you have with Park Sportsbook?
Well, you can find them all, obviously, on all the Park social channels, at Park Sportsbook on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, and on my personal, Twitter at Jason Mert. We do OGs, the podcast, along with Harry Mays, which is kicked off, and we're having so much fun. Harry and I love doing the show together.
I love it. You guys back together.
Yeah, and it's like nestling up to a bar next to a guy you haven't been at the bar with in a while. And in a pandemic, I think everybody can identify with that. So we do OGs every week, and then we're doing the Stick to Hockey live show every Monday and Thursday at 1 o'clock. We stream it live on all those channels I just told you about, and then it's available on demand as well on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, all the different podcast platforms. So it's on demand on video and audio. We've had some great guests and tons to talk about, and not just COVID, but a lot of sports as well, and a lot of fun with OGs with Harry. We get into music and all kinds of stuff. So it's been awesome to do, and I can't thank Park Sportsbook for being our presenting sponsor. It's been an awesome, project to work on with them, and we're having a lot of fun.
Awesome, Jason. Thank you so much for joining us, and we can't wait for more from you.
Thanks, Sam. Have a great 2022, everybody.